Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. As part of a knowledge series today, we'll be discussing a very important topic, which is Sufism. So, Sufism is a topic which generally falls into art and culture, and both as part of medieval India. And we saw Bhakti Sufi as a very important mains question which came through this year in 2021 itself. So basically, Sufism is a very important topic related to culture generally. So, before we start and go into Sufism itself, I hope you've seen the Bhakti video of knowledge series. That gives you a little bit of context because these two movements are very similar and in North India are happening at the same point of time in that regard. So basically what you need to understand is, and don't have to go too much into the complexity because Sufism will rise as a concept, as a movement in what we call Central Asia, in West Asia specifically, and then come to India via the different saints. So we don't have to go into that rationalist and non-rationalist debate which happens across Islam generally in West Asia itself. We would rather have to understand what is the larger concept of Sufism and how does it intersect with Bhaktism, and also who are the important saints in this. And we'll talk about two very important silsilas today, which is Suhrawardi and Chisti, the two most important, and we'll try to understand their basic rivalry and why did they become so popular. So when we talk about Sufism, Sufism is an alternative path. It is within the ambit of Islam itself. It does not go beyond Islam, much like the Bhakti movement within the ambit of Hinduism like Bhakti. The same way, Sufism is not outside Islam. But Islam is a monotheistic religion, and what happens is by 8th and 9th century, there are a lot of different interpretations of the holy law, which is Sharia, and specifically Islam has a lot of different codes and elaborate behaviors which have come through. So basically by 8th, 9th century, we have three very important characteristics. One is institutionalization of the religion within the different institutions of Islam. Over and above that, it has elaborate rituals, and over and above that, there is also another thing which is multiple interpretations. Now the point is that because there are multiple interpretations, it is institutionalized and it is based on elaborate rituals. Sufism rises at the same point of time in West Asia as an example or as an alternative to this, as an alternative to institutionalization of religion, to multiple interpretations and to elaborate rituals and codes. And the Sufi way, in that way, is actually quite different from all institutional forms of devotion, because here again personal devotion becomes important, and this is here that Bhakti and Sufi actually share. That is why UPSC asks this question, because Bhakti movement and Sufi movement have one similarity, which is that both are based on the concept of personal devotion. Other than that, they are separate religions. Basically, the basic method is the same, which is personal devotion to God via singing, sama, different types of ways through which you could meet God, tariqa. Basically, silsilas are actually different tariqas itself. So the point which I am trying to argue here before we go into what is written in the PPT is that you need to understand that the context is similar. The basic point is institutionalization of the religion within institutional Islam, along with multiple interpretations plus elaborate rituals and different interpretations of the holy law, Sharia itself. In turn meant that there was a need where the Sufis said that this basic behavior, this codes, these elaborate rituals are not needed, rather to meet God. And remember, every religion, it is about union with God. So the way the Sufis argued about it was that we are going to be devoted to God, we will worship God via our personal devotion. And this is the basic difference, that the institutionalization of Islam is not based on personal devotion, it is through an institution. On the other hand, Sufism is more about personal devotion. So before I go into the text itself, please understand this very, very clearly, that Islam propagated monotheism and submission to one God, that is standard. By 8th and 9th century, various religious scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, which is Sharia, and theology of Islam. That happens with an age of a religion. More or less, interpretations will change. There will be multiple interpretations. There will be multiple theological understanding. While the religion of Islam gradually became more and more complex, Sufis provided it with an additional dimension that favored a more personal devotion to God. And this is a very important concept which UPSC wants you to push through. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. This is the whole point. This word is very, very important because the concept is based on this itself. The fact is that this personal devotion is what the concept will revolve around in Sufism. And that is why different silsilas will have a different way of linking themselves with God, but basically the context is the same. It is about coming out of institutionalized worship, it is coming out of institutionalized connection and going for personal level devotion. This is a very important point which you need to understand, because a lot of students understand Bhakti and Sufi in isolation. You need to understand that they both have a very basic similarity, which is personal devotion. Personal devotion, Bhakti itself means personal devotion. Sufism is a personification of that kind of personal devotion within Islam itself. So, what the Sufi intern, Sufi saint intern, and you need to know two words here. One word is called Peer, the other is called Murid. Peer is the Guru or the teacher himself, Murid is the follower. And then you need to know another two words, which is Khanka and Dargah. So the point is, when the Peer is alive, it is called the Khanka. And when the Peer dies, it becomes his Dargah. So till the point the teacher, the Guru is alive, the Peer is alive, it's called a Khanka. Nizamuddin Aulia's Khanka. Once Nizamuddin Aulia will die, it will become Nizamuddin Aulia ki Dargah, which it is till today. So Dargah is when the main Peer, the main Guru is not alive. Khanka is when he is alive. Peer, Murid, four basic words which are very basic to Sufism itself. So we've now understood what do we mean by the concept of Sufism. Sufism is an alternative path which developed in Central Asia, West Asia, came to India via Muhyiddin Chisti, and thereafter other different silsilas will also migrate to India. The basic point is that Sufism is a response to institutionalized religion, institutionalized Islamic religion, and the elaborate rituals and multiple interpretations. So, what is the Sufi method then? What is the Sufi method? The Sufi method is they sought union with God much as a lover seeking his beloved with disregard for the world. Again, something which you can see reminiscence between Bhakti and Sufi, that it's about personal longing, it's about personal belonging, it's about personal devotion, it's about love to God. Basically, love is something very, very important within Sufism. Like the saint poets, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings and a rich literature in prose with anecdotes, fables, and the fact is that they now started to write a lot of important literature, songs which technically connected them with God. They developed elaborate methods of training. Basically, if you are a murid of a Peer, there are different ways through which you can see God. First is zikr, which is chanting the name and the sacred formula. You chant God's name. Then contemplation, thinking about God always. Sama bandhana, which is singing. Singing becomes very important in Bhakti movement also after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how he contributed to the Bhakti movement itself. The same way, singing was a very, very important method of longing for God and connecting with God. Then you have Raqs, which is dance, discussion of the parables, breathing control, and the fact is the Peer will teach the Murid how all of these things will connect. So basically, it's an alternative method of seeking God. There is, let's keep the politics aside because we will bring in when we'll talk about Suhrawardis and Chistis, but basically at the core it is about how you connect with God. It is about connectivity with God. And when we talk about connectivity with God, it is about how you use that love and how do you combine it with the sama, how do you combine it with singing, dancing and longing for God. It's about love to God, and that is again why these two movements come together in the exam, or UPSC wants you to know. So remember, for the purpose of the UPSC, there are a lot of similarities in these two. Though they are different religions, there are similarities. That is, personal devotion is at core value within both. Then, now there is basic concept that personal devotion will be there, but there are different methods. The fact that this personal devotion can take different forms, which is different methods of personal devotion, which is called tariqa. So based on different tariqas, or based on different concepts of what this personal devotion will be, different methods, the point is that method will tell you which guru you are following. And based on methods, you have multiple Sufi orders also, which we call as Silsilah. Silsilah means that there was one guru, and thereafter you have 2, 3, 4, 5 different murids who started to become guru, but the basic method is the same. So basically the main peer is going to put the basic, for example, 3 methods, and then his murid is going to become peer after the main peer dies. So second, third, fourth and fifth then take that basic 3 method forward, so they are part of one silsila. Silsila is nothing but the genealogy, as it says. It is the genealogy, spiritual genealogy of Sufi teachers. One teacher can have multiple students. Those students, when they become teachers, they take that teacher's concept forward. So Abhishek Silsila, the same, anybody's Silsila. Basically, if my method of teaching is something which has certain peculiarities, you take it forward, then you become part of that Silsila. Silsila word is generally order. It's a broad category of basic practitioners who follow basic concepts itself. So within the silsilas, we also have 2 types of silsilas. One is called Bashara, one is called Beshara. The basic point is both come within Islam, but the Bashara ones follow Sharia also and its directives such as namaz and roza, and the chiefs ones were Chisti, Suhrawardi, Firdausiya, Qadri and Naqshbandi. On the other hand, we have the Kalandars, which are Beshara, which technically don't bound themselves with everything which is within Sharia, which is the holy law, but go beyond it also. And this is why Beshara, Bashara, very important terms which can come in the exam, both prelims and mains. There are quite a lot of silsilas across the world, but the 4 major silsilas which were there in India was Chisti, Qadariya, Suhrawardi and Naqshbandiya. We will discuss Chisti and Suhrawardi because they both were contemporaries to each other during the Delhi Sultanate period, and quite important in that regard of what Sufi method actually means. The basic point is that the way you learn it, see, the way you learn it as a UPSC aspirant is you learn Bhakti and then you get the basic concept of Bhakti. Then Sufi should be seen as just the mirror impression of that in Islam. Therefore, you don't have to learn both together. Sufism, the basic terms change and the concept of personal devotion remains the same. That is one similarity which links both of them. So, we now have understood what Sufism is. We've understood what the word silsila means. We now need to understand who were the Chistis and who were the Suhrawardis. So, the Chisti Silsilah. Let's talk about them first, then we'll look at the PPT. The Chisti Silsilah, Moinuddin Chisti, very important, is known to have come after the invasion of Gori, more or less with the establishment of Delhi Sultanate. He was there in Ajmer, a very important personality in Ajmer itself, but his disciple Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki will at the same time, so he was the peer, Murid was Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. Bakhtiyar Kaki was important because Kaki came to Delhi. So he had a very important influence over Delhi Sultans itself. It is also told that the Qutub Minar is named after him, technically not true, but we have a theory about that. It is Qutub Minar, Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. But the basic point is that he came during the Delhi Sultanate period, and he was not that popular once when he was alive, meaning his khanka was not that popular, but once he will die, his dargah is going to become very, very important. But his importance can be linked to the fact that even Muhammad bin Tughlaq visited his dargah, and then later Akbar visited his dargah, thereby making Chisti very, very important. Chisti Sufis have a very important peculiarity. Once I'll talk about the silsila itself, the peculiarity is they will never take any patronage from the sultans. So basically they will take money from anybody, they will take the help from anybody, but they will never take any form of service in imperial order or take any money from the sultan as a form of salary. Basically they stayed away from the state, they stayed away from the court of the sultan. So Moinuddin Chisti, very, very important. His importance, as I told, linked with the fact that even Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Akbar will visit it. But his disciples were even more important, and you have Bakhtiyar Kaki, Delhi. Then you have Faruddin Ganja Shakkar, who is nothing but Baba Farid, who was again very important in the Punjab sector. And then we have the most important Chisti Sufi, who is Nizamuddin Auliya. Nizamuddin Auliya will be his murid, who is going to be Nasruddin Chirag Dilli, after which Chirag Dilli is named after. But Nizamuddin Auliya will be extremely important because of his stories and how he had a major feud with Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. And that is a very important story. When I'll come to that, I'll talk about, because Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq's death is technically linked to Nizamuddin Auliya and what is the curse of Nizamuddin Auliya, but we'll come to that. So the Chisti order was established in India by Khwaja Moinuddin Chisti, who probably moved into India after the invasion of Muizzuddin Muhammad Ghori and settled in Ajmer around that same period of time. He was the person who argued that the highest form of devotion to God was to redress the misery of those in distress and fulfilling the needs of the helpless and feeding the hungry. So if you help the poor, you help God. And this is again a very important peculiarity of the Chistis. They believe that helping the poor is technically helping yourself and connecting with God. And the basic point is, after his death, his dargah is going to become very, very important, because Muhammad bin Tughlaq will visit it, then even Mahmud Khilji of Malwa will visit it, and his stories will become so popular in that sector that even Akbar will visit his dargah later. But his disciples are much more important. So you have Sizzi or Chisti, same thing. Then you have Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, Faruddin Ganja Shakkar or Baba Farid, Nizamuddin Auliya and Nasruddin Chirag Dilli. Now, out of this, Nizamuddin Auliya till today is very, very popular. But what the Chistis believed in is very important. That simplicity of life was very, very important. Humility, selfless devotion to God was important. The renunciation of all worldly possessions was regarded by them as significant to control the senses. So therefore, they were based on concept of austerity, will not take too much luxury, will not take property, will not take a lot of money. Love as the bound between God and the individual soul, and adapting an attitude of benevolence towards all. The tolerance between the people of different faiths and acceptance of their disciplines irrespective of the religious beliefs or disciples even. The fact is that every religion was allowed in Nizamuddin Auliya's dargah. So his disciples were anybody could be his disciple irrespective of their religious belief. But the most important peculiar aspect of Chistis is that use of simple language and refusal to accept any grant for their maintenance from the Sultan. Basically, they will not take anything from the Sultan. And the story about this is that when Nizamuddin Auliya was in Delhi, he had become so influential that Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq did not like it. And there's a very important story which says that Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq had gone to Gujarat and Tughlaqabad fort was being made. So when Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was leaving from Delhi, he told Nizamuddin Auliya that once I come back and when I promulgate my new capital, which is Tughlaqabad, you should be gone from Delhi. Meaning, You should not be in Delhi. I am giving you this last warning. You have acted as a parallel power source. You are too influential with people. I don't want you to be here. So he goes to Gujarat, and then when he comes back, when he is close to 70-80 kilometers away from Delhi, he sends a small message to Nizamuddin Aulia, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, saying that I am reaching Delhi. I hope that you are not here. And then Nizamuddin Aulia gives a very important line which is called Dilli Durast, Abhi Dilli Dur hai. And the irony is that the curse of Nizamuddin Aulia said that as soon as Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq entered the gate of Tughlaqabad fort, the elephant got stuck in the gate and the gate ceiling fell upon Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and technically he died on the spot itself. And it is believed that it was the curse of Nizamuddin Aulia that he would never enter his own city, and Nizamuddin Aulia was still there. Though there's another theory that it was actually Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was very eager to become the ruler, so he technically assassinated his father, and that was again a very big controversy over that. But the basic point is that Nizamuddin Aulia was so important that even Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq would actually refer to him, and a lot of different sources refer to him. So the Chistis, one of the most powerful and one of the most influential in that regard. When we talk about this whole Chisti sector, Chistis are known to be based on austerity, are based on people who are on Sufi saints who will actually not go to the Sultan's court and not take any money from the state for their maintenance, but very, very influential in that regard. The exact opposite of the Chistis were the Suhrawardis. The Suhrawardis were actually the ones who were extremely influential in the court of the king. They were, when Bakhtiyar Kaki actually came to Delhi, even Suhrawardis tried to remove Kaki from Delhi because they knew that Chistis are quite popular. So basically, Suhrawardis are the exact opposite of the Chistis. That is why this conflict. They link themselves with the state. They believe that state help and state money is important to help the poor. So the basic concept is helping the poor, devotion to God, but the method is totally different. And this is why there was always a perpetual tension between the Suhrawardis and the Chistis. But the Chistis were much more popular with the people and Suhrawardis were much more popular with the state. So the Silsila was started by Shahabuddin Suhrawardi in Baghdad, and in India it was brought in by Badruddin Zakaria. Remember this because he is a very important personality in that regard. And Suhrawardis, unlike the Chistis, accepted maintenance guard from sultans, while the Chistis were active in Delhi, Rajasthan and parts of western Gangetic plains. The later years, the eastern region of the Gangetic plains, the Deccan Suhrawardis were much more active in Punjab and Sindh. Basically, Suhrawardis were more or less Delhi, Punjab and Sindh. On the other hand, you have western Gangetic plains and Delhi along with Rajasthan and even later parts of Bihar and Bengal, where the Chistis were very, very important. So the Suhrawardis are an exact opposite of the Chistis, because what they believed in was that a Sufi should possess three attributes: property, knowledge and hal, which is mystical enlightenment. And they felt that this was necessary to ensure that they served the poor better. So they believed that the Sultan's money, the state, is extremely important in linking the way the Sufi can help the poor. Thus, they did not believe in excessive austerities, self-mortification, and mingled with the aristocracy and took very active part in politics. They stressed on observance or external, what is called the concept of, we are going to take the state's property, the money, and use it for the poor. So, external forms of religious belief, and advocated ilm, which is scholarship. You need to be a learned to practice Sufism. So, before I close the topic, because it's a very big topic, I'm just giving you a little bit part of it. The basic point is Sufis are an alternative path to God. All religions everywhere, the basic concept is how do you meet God. It's about union with God. It's about devotion to God. And the Sufis, unlike the other institutionalized forms of Islamic practice, argued that it is only personal devotion which can link us with God in that regard. And they had different ways of linking are different ways of personal devotion. But their basic method is personal devotion, love to God. And this is something which links them up or is largely connected with Bhaktism, because Bhaktism is also about personal devotion to God coming out of institutionalized networks of worship. However, Sufism branched out into different what are called silsilas because the tariqa, the method was different. Within that, two most important were Chisti and Suhrawardi, both very, very popular during the Delhi Sultanate period. The Qadris are going to become very, very important by the Mughal period, because Roshan Ara, Jahan Ara, even Shah Jahan, quite influenced by Qadriya. The other way, Chisti and Suhrawardi very active during the Delhi Sultanate period. Chisti is the most popular, austerity, self-mortification, will not take 1 rupee from the state, but will accept money from others, but not the state or the Sultan. Extremely powerful, extremely controversial because of their controversy with the kings and the sultans. On the other way, Suhrawardi is important because they are the exact opposite of Chistis. Suhrawardis tried to block Chistis in Delhi itself, but they were able to establish themselves, and till today Nizamuddin Aulia's dargah is extremely important in that regard. Suhrawardi, on the other hand, problem is that they become intermixed with the state, so the people don't identify with them, but they have their own method of devotion. And this is basically what we are trying to understand today through the Sufi sector. So now let's take the questions. I hope Sufism is more or less clear to you now. Okay. Peer has murid, and every murid, one of the murids, so a peer could have multiple murids, and one of those murid would become the next teacher, so he becomes the peer. So the silsila goes on forward with the peer, murid, peer, murid, peer, peer, murid, peer, murid, peer, murid. Peer become peer, gives a murid, murid, 5, 6 are there, one will become the peer. Okay. Yes, as I told you, the basic similarity is personal devotion. Yes, genealogy is a very generic word. It is about a study of basic successive generations. So it could be genealogy of teachers, it could be genealogy of silsilas, it could be anything. There is Qutub Minar was made by Qutubuddin Aibak. So it could either be his own name, Qutub Minar, or Qutubuddin Bakhtiar Kaki. There are two theories, different sources, different concepts. Sufi Bhakti quite different in the regard that one is Hinduism, one in Islam. There is Bhakti movement much more elaborate, much older, because it starts in 7th century, then comes to North Indian 15th century. More or less this is a 12th, 11th century concept. Sufism is much late. Sufism comes when the second wave of Bhaktism comes through. Yes, Amir Khusro was one of the murids of Nizamuddin Aulia, a very important one in that regard. So basically, with this, let's end the session. Sufism, more or less, not a complex topic. Silsilas are important. Remember the words Bir, Murid, Khanka, Dargah. This is the basic words which you need to know along with Silsila. Perfect. Thank you so much. I will see you next week with two very interesting topics. One is going to be on the French Revolution. We'll talk about the causes of the French Revolution. This is the last session for this week. So, French Revolution, causes, and we'll also discuss Indus Valley Civilization, basic sites and characteristics. 2 sessions for next week, one from world history, second one from ancient and art and culture, technically architectural history. Thank you so much. I hope now everything is clear. I will see you next week on Monday with the French Revolution. Thank you.